Well, thanks everyone for coming out to this talk about direct freight as a small carrier. We are Truckbase TMS. We're a TMS for small fleets focused on anywhere from 5 trucks to 100. You're probably not here to hear me talk. You're probably here to talk with Tom here. And so we'll go ahead and get started here. Tom is the founder, president, owner of Herlache Truck Lines out of Wisconsin. He's a paper hauler primarily. About 70% of your freight comes from direct freight, so we're going to talk about that here today.
Yeah.
Welcome, Tom.
Yep. Can you?
Click that one more time.
I'm orange now.
All right, green.
Check.
Nope.
This button on the outside or?
The top one.
Yeah. Ain't nothing. Should have tested. Dan?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
All right, Tom, can you tell me a little about Herlache Truck Lines?
Yeah, so we're a small trucking company. I started in 2013. Our primary niche market is doing freight from Green Bay to Chicago and Chicago back to Green Bay. We run about 2,500 miles per truck per week and haul a lot of paper freight. That's kind of what you cut your teeth on in the state of Wisconsin. And we do dry van.
Awesome. Great. Well, before we jump into the meat of the talk here, quick plug, we have a dinner tonight. We're going to be hosting pizza, beer, networking at Parlor Pizza / Fall City Beer, 6 p.m. Address is up there. We'll be over here after with some invites if anyone wants to stop by. With that, we got a great agenda here today. Some of the topics we're going to talk about are how did Tom, as a small fleet, get his first contract, right? It's a topic that's very present in trucking community here today. The second is, how do I differentiate on service? The third is your brokerage side. You have a small brokerage you guys operate as well. How does that fit into this? And then lastly, what's the role of systems and technology here? As a smaller carrier, you can't really compete with the megas on technology in the same way. So with that, would love to just start with a little bit of the how you learned how to build what you've built at Herlache, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I started off in the industry as a dispatcher. I did that for a year before I went to Coyote Logistics and then smaller brokerage up in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And I did well and I liked the work, but I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. So in 2012, I quit my job and started writing a business plan to start Herlache Truck Lines. And the first thing that I did was go around to about 200 different customers in the Milwaukee area, and every single person that I talked to gave me the same feedback, which was, do you have your own assets? So that was a pretty clear direction for me to go into. I had always known that like a trucking company would be a good thing for me to start from when I was a dispatcher, and I liked working with the drivers. I felt a sense of satisfaction when we would deliver shipments, and so we started like that and got 2 trucks and 6 old Schneider trailers and started trucking with a couple of company drivers.
Awesome. I'm curious, your first direct customer contract, How did you land that? We hear that a lot about how you break through. That first one you landed, can you tell that story a little bit about how that worked out?
Yeah, so I had some business cards made up and I literally went to every business that had a dock in my city and introduced myself, said, hey, I'm a brand new trucking company in town. I would sure like to haul freight for you, and what would I need to do? Who's the right person to talk to? And I ended up kind of lucking out. I hooked up with a customer that was growing their business as well, and they had a need, and we started doing 1 load at a time with them. And then by the time, I want to say like about 6 months in, they had partnered with the co-manufacturer to make their bottles that they put their product in, and it happened to be in the same lane that we already had as a niche. And by the end of year 3, we did about like $950,000 in revenue with that customer. We were doing about 3 loads a day every day.
Awesome. Well, I understand you did more than just haul their freight. You were a full service partner for them. Could you share a little bit about what being their partner meant and what you did beyond just pick and drop at point A to point B here?
Yeah, so, and this is something I still practice today when I'm trying to get in with customers. I say, what loads are you having problems with? What are your problem loads? Let me take that and figure that out for you. Let me take that off your plate. Who's failing? Where is the failure happening? And this is something I learned from this account, actually. So this manufacturer that I partnered with had, I think, like 9,000 different SKUs that they would be putting their product on. So bottle sizes made a huge difference. It's the stuff that's going into the GNCs and stuff like that. So it's whey protein powder. And if we didn't deliver the correct color bottle, if it was supposed to be a white bottle and the day before, like, you know how production schedules are, things change. So the day before, the load would be a bottle, or it would be an entire truckload of black bottles, 16 ounce, right? Well, the next morning at about 7 a.m., the production manager would send out, hey, we need to change these to the, 32 ounce bottles. And I'm communicating with the drivers. I'm talking to the bottle manufacturer, telling them, hey, get those other bottles off my trailer, put these new ones on, and we can't shut down production. So over the course of 3 years, I think we ended up delivering, it was probably like 1,800 to 1,900 loads. We never caused any production issues. We were never part of any sort of problem with manufacturing, and everything got delivered when it was supposed to get delivered. So delivering that high level of service, like, that is what differentiates, and like anybody that's here wants to be better at what we do, right? So obviously you guys care and want to be on time and want to, make the customers happy. Now the customers aren't always going to be happy, but you got to do everything you can. And something that I learned when I was a freight broker at Coyote Logistics was the no excuses mentality. And like, I'm going to bend over backwards, especially in the beginning when you're trying to establish that customer relationship. Whatever it takes, that's what I'm going to do to get that job done.
Yeah. We'd love to hear a bit more about where you learned this mentality, right? Because if you're running on load boards, you don't require this quite to the same level as when you are building a really meaningful contract. How did you learn this sales and service mentality? You mentioned Coyote, but we'd love to hear an example of kind of how you cut your teeth in that world. Yeah, so,
learned a lot of lessons the hard way, right? And I always say about that, like, when you learn a lesson the hard way, you never forget, You would learn that way once. So customers are very demanding, and it's specifically this customer. So I found out that if we were to shut down that production line, it was going to cost about $38,000 an hour for their production to be shut down. And like, we were delivering these bottles, and 4 hours later they were getting filled on the production line. So, that was part of it. That's when I learned. At that time, I had already started Herlache truck lines.
Yeah.
I think if we go back before that as a dispatcher, it was something where I've kind of always had that mentality, like, I'm not going to be the problem, and if I am the problem, I'm going to take responsibility for it. And that's something else I would say, always take responsibility for issues that might occur, even if it's not your fault and there's some other way to defer, say, oh, okay, somebody else kind of messed up. Take responsibility for it, apologize, and move on. This is business. There's not feelings in business. We need to move on. We need to get tomorrow's work done as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that was your first direct contract, and you grew that. I think you did 3 loads a day for a while. Is that what that was?
Yeah, and that was, at the time, I was only up to 5 trucks. So, me going out and handing my business cards to people 9 months before that had gotten me to where I was, and that helped grow my fleet. And for 3 years, that really, really helped grow my fleet. I didn't have to think about those 3 backhauls every single day.
So landing that contract or those loads, what did that get you to, that first one? Did you stay at 5? Did that get you to 10? How far did that first customer get you before you needed to think about what was your next contract or what was going to get you to the next level here?
Yeah, so obviously, like, as we grew, we did get other customers, and some of them the same way, actually, So I would say that got me up to probably about 8 trucks. And having that base just made it so much easier to take chances on other things and go to other locations, expand my niche a little bit.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know you have some large carriers in your backyard, right?
Yeah.
And so how you win for the same...
I hear you.
All right.
Okay. Do they got me?
I think we're good.
All right.
I've got some aliens in here.
Yeah.
How you win for the same freight, what do you differentiate on? How do you go into the same shippers, and how are you winning some of those bids?
Yeah, I'll say this quietly because I think they're here, but Schneider is in my backyard, 13,000 truck fleet or whatever they're up to at this time. And we've got paper transport, and we've got rail logistics, and we've got Bison, and all these monsters are in my backyard. So how can I differentiate myself? And when I go into a customer and somebody that we already have a relationship that we're doing work with now, I ask them like, hey, how come Schneider's not here, or have you guys asked Schneider? And they're like, well, I call Schneider and I have to talk to 8 different people before I can find out where my load is. So that's something that I think any one of us that's here right now can differentiate ourselves from the megas by saying, hey, my customer service is second to none. You're going to be getting me, or you're going to be getting my dispatcher every single time you call. And if there's something you need, we're going to get it taken care of. So
awesome. Well, I know you have a brokerage as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious how that comes into these conversations with the shippers. You have an asset side, that's your primary business.
Yeah.
How does the brokerage factor into that?
So we only broker, we run about, I'd say 4,000 loads a year. We only broker about 100 loads a year, but what we're doing when we have to broker, it's the no excuses type of deal, basically. Hey, my truck broke down, I'm not gonna be able to get this load picked up. Now I'm gonna broker this freight out, and sometimes you win on it, sometimes you lose on it. It doesn't really make a difference. You need to get the job done for the customer. And then another thing to think about, I'll mention this, we didn't really talk about mentioning it, but to get a dual authority or to open up a brokerage, it is about $1,100 in order to get your bond insurance, and that's it. So don't be afraid to do that, and it's easy. And for me, okay, so I've got a good relationship with this transportation manager. He's telling me, hey, my salesman wants me to quote this, how much is it going to cost to get this truckload to Iowa? And I don't want to go to Iowa, but I've got 3 buddies that own trucking companies that can go to Iowa for me. So now I'm not telling my customer, I can't do that for you, or call somebody else. And let me tell you, right now, everybody's hungry. The brokers are hungry. The trucking companies are hungry. Everyone is out working to try to get new customers. So when you can keep that with you, it makes all the difference in the world. And now that transportation manager knows that he can call me and ask me to go somewhere that, yeah, you might not have a Herlache truck on it, but Tom's going to get the job done. You're going to get that same level of service.
Yeah. I think you mentioned before the fact that it doesn't open the door for someone else to come into that relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's the fact that they can come to you,
Yeah.
and there's no need to call anybody else for their needs here.
Yep.
Shifting gears a little bit to the world of technology, it's more my world, but I know you have thought a lot about how technology fits into your business and the customer side specifically. Maybe talking about winning some of the contracts you've won and how technology plays into that.
Yeah, I don't know. Did we add the 100%? Do we got that in the screen?
It is. I can.
Yeah,
jump there
it's
now.
not a big deal. They'll see it in a minute. Okay. Yeah. So what this is right here, what this is showing, is my customer's ability to track my trucks and how we've done with compliance with tracking. So as you can see there, this is, like Bryan said, it's boring, right? It's just a straight line. Yeah. but that's exactly what it has to be for this specific customer. And for this specific customer, I mean, they're $2.3 billion worth of freight is what they ship every year. And if I want to be able to go into a place like that, like I'm going to have to play at the scale. You know, like I'm not a mega, you're going to get better service than a mega, but can I provide the same information, the EDI connectivity, API connections, and tracking updates that a mega can provide? So I try to think about technology like that. Like this is going to get me in the door, this is going to help me. And then also with these accounts that I have set up on EDI, like I don't even invoice them. I mean, I do so that I can put it through into my QuickBooks, but they're not looking for a proof of delivery. They've got everything. They know the load delivered already. They have it on their back end as well. So that sort of connectivity, it's a roadblock if you don't have it, and it's a game changer if you do. You know, it's just a way in, and it's something to offer that not all. That's me. Let's try it again. It's this new fancy shirt I got, Brian.
There you go. Should have worn the tux.
Yeah.
You mentioned the EDI. A lot of folks aren't familiar with the EDI. Can you talk about the table stakes of like what gets you in the door? You mentioned it's a roadblock, but why is it so important for getting into some of these conversations?
You know, you're not going to be able to even get in the door with these customers if you don't have some of these capabilities. And I don't want $2.3 billion worth of freight. You know, that's not what I want, but it sure is nice to get the little portion that I can get, you know, and I wouldn't have that ability if I didn't have that technology.
Yeah. Well, for folks who aren't familiar, not everyone may be EDI enabled right now. What does that mean? What does that mean for you and your business and how you operate?
So what it looks like in practice is that the customer is building the shipment. It's got all the pickup and delivery details on it, every single piece of information that you could want, and delivery appointment, whether the lumber is going to be prepaid, all of that stuff. How it comes over to me, which is that what you're asking, is kind of like, what does it look like? Yeah, so how it comes over to me is like I get a little notification on my software that says, hey, like, you know, this customer has tendered over a shipment, would you like to accept it? I click accept, immediately it builds that load in my system. My customer knows that I accepted the shipment, and now it's tracked automatically all the way through.
And why do they care about that so much? I know you mentioned it's a blocker, but why is this boring chart so important? I know this is a very boring chart, but you were really excited when you got these results.
Yeah, so when I first got this customer, I actually happenstance ended up talking to the president of the company totally outside of work time, and he told me that they were doing $2.3 billion worth of freight with 220 people. So I did some napkin math, and it was like $88 million per customer service person that they had. That's how much freight these people are sending out. Now, if that customer service rep has to send out an email or make a phone call every time they want to know the status of a shipment, it's just not realistic. You can't track that much freight. You can't make that many phone calls in a day. Yeah. So having EDI allows them to manage all of that.
Awesome. On your side of the house, we talked about how you win the freight. We talked about growing some of those contracts based on the performance here.
Yeah.
How does that change how you service it on your end, having these types of customers and these types of loads versus more brokered loads? What does your team look like? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so my team is myself and my dispatcher. We do have a maintenance guy that came on board 2 years ago to start helping us with our trailer maintenance, but it's small. We've got, like I said, 17 trucks. I got one dispatcher dispatching 17 trucks. She's managing $4.5 million worth of freight. Now we're working a little bit longer days, obviously, when times were good and we were booked out for a week or two at a crack. It wasn't quite as much work, but we're sticking to 8-hour days. The nights and weekends calls are not happening now. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's how it works.
Awesome. Well, I know we had this one metric here. This is the tracking metric. It's not the only one.
Yeah.
Could you put us in the minds of your customers a bit? What metrics are you tracking? What are they tracking? And how do you do better on those metrics?
Yeah, so like on-time delivery and the acceptance rate, all of those things are being tracked. I guess, like which one specifically are you alluding to here?
I guess it's more about how frequently are you looking at that? How have you done over time? This one, for example, is flat here. Has it always been flat? How do you improve
so
that?
it has not always been flat. We were with a different TMS before, and it was like the Rocky Mountains. It was terrible. It was up and down, and I think you need a system that's got a solid backbone and that you're going to be able to have confidence in. And I think before I came on to Truckbase, like I was so worried about if my invoices were getting sent out properly that I told you like the first like 500 or 750 invoices that we sent out, like I checked to make sure myself that every single document was in there, because we ended up in a situation with the previous TMS where a POD wouldn't attach or a Raycon wouldn't attach, and then we were in a situation where they just didn't say anything back and they didn't pay the bill, and then you're finding out 35 days later why the bill didn't get paid.
Yeah, awesome. Well, at 17 trucks, you've invested a lot in systems and processes. I've mentioned a few times, at 17 you kind of operate like you're at 50.
Yeah.
Why? Why have you done all this? It obviously takes effort, it takes work.
Yeah.
We'd love to talk about the reasoning.
This is like an old adage, right? That like you want to work on it, not in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that has driven me this entire time. Like when I first started off, I was using ITS dispatch and doing all the dispatch myself. Like I was in it, down in it. And now, like what I'm finding more is that I'm doing a lot of accounting work. Like I'm not doing much of the dispatch, and a lot of that is good because the day-to-day stuff will get you frustrated and take your mind off of, hey, like what is the actual goal here? And having a system that you're confident in gives you the ability to go out and do sales calls. I don't have to worry about what's going to be going wrong with operations because I'm not there.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at now. So
awesome. You mentioned what you do day to day has changed.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you have 17 trucks, there's 2 folks mostly on the office side, and you have a maintenance guy who's working on the trucks and the trailers. How do you spend your time now at your size and the complexity of your operation today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like watching a lot of stuff, so always watching the auction, seeing what the trailer equipment prices are, that kind of thing. Getting that kind of feedback. I spend a lot of time reading about what the market's going to do, trying to figure that out, listening to the smartest people in the industry and what their predictions are, and just trying to take in as much information as possible about, where trucking is going, that kind of thing. So also do a lot of, and this is something I would encourage everybody here to do, is, network with the trucking companies that are around you. We are not enemies. We are one group, and we need to work together, and this is something that's like super duper important to me. And you've seen it like when I was up in Wisconsin, like people know Herlache, and like most people have a positive idea of who we are, and anybody that's worked with me will know like Tom's going to do the right thing. And that's also like a core value of Herlache Truck Lines, is doing the right thing. So I would encourage everybody here that came to this talk, go talk to the trucking company that's next door, go talk to the trucking company that's down the road. Talk to those guys, find out, hey, do you know about this? Hey, like we're using this maintenance facility. We're getting pretty good rates out of this. These guys are doing a good job. So, yeah.
Awesome. Going back a bit to some of the processes you've invested in, could you walk me through, some of the processes and how that's impacted your customer relationships? I know you have a lot of processes, systems, technology, and you're very diligent in that process.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the brokerage side or brokered loads or on the direct freight. We'd love to hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, so right now, with Truckbase, we actually have the capability of emailing a link to our customer for each load, and not every customer wants this, but we get the loads in. If it's a brokered load, 99 times out of 100, we're going to be able to upload that rate confirmation into Truckbase. It's going to automatically build that load. We're going to check it for details, make sure everything is correct, but it always is. And then it goes onto the dispatch board. We're like ready to send it out. The customer's going to get a notification, as many notifications as I want them to get. Hey, the load's been built, the load's been dispatched, the load is picked up, the load is in transit, the load is delivered. So right now, my customer gets an email with a link to the load and can click and see where their truck is, which, not everybody wants that, but a lot of them are like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I think the benefit of that is like just that type of feedback from a customer, like they're gonna like what Herlache Truck Lines is doing because like nobody else is doing this.
Yeah. More on the driver side, I know you guys also differentiate on drivers that have been with you for a while, right?
Yep.
And it's a lot of referral-based hiring.
Yeah.
How has the direct freight that you have impacted how you think about team and how drivers, are sticking around with Herlache?
Yeah, I got to tell you one account that I still have today that we do a lot of work for. My driver showed up. It was a brokered load. Showed up, picked up the load, and the customer came out and was like, "Hey, would you mind moving a trailer out of a dock for me?" And my driver called me and he's like, "Hey, do you mind if I do this?" I was like, "No, man, that'd be great. Like, do it." So he did it, and about 2 weeks later, that customer gave me a call and he was like, "Hey, would you like to start working direct with us?" And now this is a customer that I do probably $300,000 worth of business with. We just started developing a new lane out to like Eau Claire, and I called him up and I was like, "Hey, do you have any freight going out to Eau Claire?" "Oh yeah, we do that 8 times a month." I was like, "I need 8 loads a month to Eau Claire." So like, I think having that type of driver that, is willing to go do a little bit extra, and what did that take that driver, 15 minutes? Well, that guy was on that account for the entire time, that we had him with us, and it put money in his pocket. And when things got tough in 2018, it was sure nice to have those consistent customer loads, and is in his area. So having good quality drivers and having a good team, like last safety meeting that I had, like I literally got goosebumps because when I started Herlache Truck Lines, I could have never imagined that I would have the quality of drivers that I have now. So having customer freight makes a big difference. It can, keep your rate per mile high during time like this. Like I think the boards are at like $1.66 last time I checked last week, and we're running at like $2.51 a mile all miles. So having customer freight can do that. It's going to keep the higher quality drivers around, and it's something that there's no substitute. That's the edge of your network, right? So those guys are the guys that are interacting with the customers. So having them have a positive mental attitude and being willing to do a little bit extra. I mean, I've done $1 million in revenue with that customer since that guy moved that trailer for 15 minutes of work. So
yeah. The last results of some of these investments you've made, more on the financial management side, how has your processes and systems and the direct customer freight impacted annual financial management, week to week? I know you're on top of your numbers. You don't get to be around 17 to 20 trucks without really knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
How has that transformed how you think about financial management?
So, I guess the number one thing, like when you say that, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, I'm getting paid faster. And how that, or the why behind that, is because the system, it's so easy to do invoicing in the system. I can literally invoice 15 loads in under 5 minutes. And just having everything like that, like being able to invoice, knowing 100% of the time all the documents that need to be attached to that are going to be attached to that. And the customer already knows it delivered in most cases because they already got an email saying the load delivered, and now 4 hours later they're getting an invoice for it. and there's no problems with the invoice. So yeah, that's, it's brought more cash flow in quickly, and that's the name of the game. That's how people are surviving right now. You got to keep that cash coming in.
And on an annual basis, more from your reporting on your rate per mile, what you're coming in at with different quotes, how do you think about that? And there's the spot market you guys have some on, and then you have a lot of this contract work. How does that, when are you looking at that? How are you looking at those numbers?
Yeah, so, right now with the contract rate, you really got to have it dialed in. You got to know your numbers, and you got to know your neighbor's numbers. Knowing, hey, is this going to be $300,000 worth of work? Is this 900 loads, or is this going to be 80 loads? And right now, it's crazy. Any bids that brokers are in on, it's like they don't care if it's one load a year. They're going to bid it like it's 1,000 loads, getting put on a dedicated carrier. So it's a little bit of a different time right now. But you can watch the numbers and see what's happening in pretty close to real time. And like when we were looking at, hey, the chart that you showed me earlier today, it was like 85, 90, 92, 82, it was like, okay, that's exactly what I thought that we were doing, and that's where we need to be at. That's exactly lined up with my weekly projections. So yeah. The
chart that we're talking about, just for folks, what is that? What's the consistency you're looking for there, and how are you tracking?
So we're always looking to double check everything, right? What amount of loads got run, what amount of loads got invoiced. So what this is basically a weekly revenue chart, and then there's a calculation on there that has your calculated rate per mile for loaded miles. So.
And just going back to these quotes and orders, knowing where you come in, what you can profitably run at, and where other folks are coming in to figure out where you want to be, how do you go about that to come in at the right spot and not take something that you shouldn't be doing?
Start high. So that's something that, so there's a customer in Oshkosh that they make plastic wrap that goes, it's like for food service. And it took me 3 years of quoting once I got in just to figure out where their rates were. And the contract rates had come up a little bit. I kept chiseling a little bit off every year. And, you need to know how intensive is the work going to be with this account? Is the shipper the type of place that you better be 30 minutes early for your appointment, because if you miss it by 15 minutes, you're going to not be able to get loaded, or are they going to tender, this happens with that customer all the time, they'll tender over 6 shipments for delivery on Friday, and then you call the receiver and they're like, I don't need that till Tuesday, and then I want 1 on Tuesday at 8 a.m., and then I'll take 3 on Wednesday, and then maybe 1 on Thursday, So you got to have that flexibility, and, try to price that in. Right now, it's going to be hard to price high-level service in, but try to be able to consider that when you're doing pricing.
So you talked about 3 years there, right? A lot of folks kind of are looking for direct freight now.
Yeah.
What's the journey this actually takes from your first load to growing it? What's the timeline for building some of these contracts, just to share what your journey has been to get your business to the point where you're majority direct now?
Yeah. So it's, sometimes you can capitalize an opportunity that comes up, and it can happen quickly, right? And you got to be able to go, and you better know your numbers and be ready to rock right away when that opportunity does arise. You want to put yourself in situations to be in those opportunities. Something that my first load that I ran for that customer, I ran as through a broker, and then I waited 2 years for that timeline to expire. Then I contacted them back directly, and then it was a full 5 years from the first load that I ran from that shipper until I had them as direct customer. So it's patience. It's a long game. I saw the talk that was happening before. We want to be set up for success. We have to think about this stuff long term. So it's not always going to be quick, But I can tell you, like, hey, if you walk into a place, you give them a business card, and they're like, oh, could you quote me on this right now? Try to do your best to give them a quote that, hey, it's going to be competitive, but add, I would say, like 10 to 15% on top of what you think a broker is going to be paying you to do it, and be ready to rock and roll. Those situations are far less than the ones where it's like, okay, this is a customer that I know. Like, you go into a place that has 150 docks and you know that they're doing a ton of shipping. Be patient. If you did a load through a broker, wait the timeline. Don't get that, carrier 411 report, but also keep that in the back of your mind. All right, it's 23 and a half months now, I need to start thinking about how to get into this place and drive around, look at these shippers and find out like who's got trucks going in and out, and go talk to them. And you'd be surprised the amount of information that you can gather just from walking into a place. I know a lot of my customers, they've got every load that they're shipping out that day that's loaded on a drop trailer is hanging on the board in the shipping office, and you can literally look and see like, okay, Schneider's got this, Viria's got this, it's crazy, but that's how it is. So just be observant and always be willing to be helpful and be patient. It's going to take time, and you're not going to get that 1,000 load contract in a day.
Starts with one.
Yeah. I always say like the expectation would be like from the first point of contact, minimum is usually 3 months before you actually are going to get to haul one load. And you might have to check in with that customer every single week until that 3-month mark. And then they're going to start, okay, well, why don't you give me a quote on this, and talk to them. Say, hey, what are your problem loads? What are you having a problem with, And maybe it's an area you don't want to go to, but you do that first load, now you're in, And hey, I did that load for you. Do you guys got anything that's going to Ohio or going to Indiana, somewhere that you want to be? And then start having that conversation with them. And if you're a little too high, don't be afraid to ask them, hey, where are you at on this? Like what rate are you trying to be at? And just have that conversation, keep it alive, and don't be afraid to be patient.
Cool. We're talking a lot about how do you get in, how do you get yes. Let's talk about no. Have you ever had to say no? How do you think about that? Have you ever had to fire a customer, and why?
Yeah, so that bottle customer came back to me and told me that Hub Group could be doing the shipments that I was doing for a 45% price cut. And I literally said to him, I was like, Randy, I don't think you have any idea the amount of work that I'm doing to make sure that these shipments happen and that we don't shut down the plant. And he's like,
this was years later now, right?
Yeah, this is 5 years into this. And we nailed it for them, we never made a mistake, and they needed us to drop 12 trailers out there. I went and rented 14 trailers from Extra Lease when there's no way I would have been able to do that without this customer, and I did it for them because that's what they needed. So they came back and said, well, we're changing, you can't come down, then is what it is, we're leaving. So they went to Hub Group, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but like I went right back to work, and we ended up replacing that work like within a week. Like just lucked out, told every customer that I had already that like, hey, I just lost like 15 loads a week.
And you had other direct freight at that point. So you
and
had
some brokers, like I have brokers that I consider customers. They might not, but these aren't brokers that post on broker loads either, or broker boards either. They have their 5 trucking companies that they know go here, and their 5 trucking companies that they know go there.
Yeah.
So, and they pay well. They pay like a customer, sometimes better than a customer. With the high volume stuff, you really got to chisel down that rate in order to get that volume, steal it away from Schneider. So, he was like, hey, all right, we're taking it. So I was, all right. So about 10 days later, I get a phone call from him. Can you pick up a load of bottles? And I was like, no, I can't. And he was like, well, what do you mean? Can you pick it up tomorrow? I was like, nah, we're booked for tomorrow. And I ended up finding out that Hub Group had brought 3 loads of bottles from Aurora, Illinois that were supposed to go up to the production facility in Wisconsin, down to the other bottle manufacturer in Dallas, Texas. And it took about 5 days. They caused the plant shutdown. And, when that customer came back around, now all of a sudden they're asking me for help, And it's not like I won't work with them at all, but I know that lane for them it's a ton of work. I was making 3 phone calls a day, making sure that the right bottles were going to be on that trailer, and it's high stress, and not like they're going to charge you back if you cause a plant shutdown, but you certainly don't want to do it. So I was like, you know what? We're going to work with you on our terms now. If you got something that I can do that works good for me, then yes, I'm going to do that. And we do Saturday work for them now, and we charge them $110 an hour from the place. If I bring a driver down from Green Bay to their facility 60 miles south of there, he gets paid for that mileage coming down and all the way back home. And they're happy with it, and they love that we'll help out and do their Saturday work. And my drivers, they like getting an extra half day's work on a Saturday morning, and it works out great for everybody. So it's not like you closed off the relationship, but certainly don't want to get involved in anything like that again. They're the type of customer that when something goes wrong, they make it worse. They just pour the gasoline on the fire. So we were talking about that on the ride down. I was like, they can really make a problem where there is none.
Fair enough. As we're kind of wrapping up here, a lot of folks are in the mindset of how do I get more of this direct freight?
Yeah.
What are the takeaways, summary, what actions, what takeaways should people be thinking about here?
Yeah, so, talk to your neighbor, talk to your brother, talk to your trucking companies that are around you. Don't be afraid. I'm friends with the owners of 250 trucking companies, 70 trucking companies, 1 trucking companies. And you want to know what? That keeps my ear to the ground. I know what they're running for. That 250 trucking company, he was going somewhere in North Carolina for like $1.68 a mile. And I told him what we were running for all miles, and we were looking at each other like I couldn't believe that he could make it at that, and he couldn't believe that I was getting paid that. And it's like, well, it's a little bit different. We're not running as high mileage, so. But what I would say, takeaways, you have to be patient with these customers, especially the big ones. It's going to take time. You're not always going to get lucky and find a need the day that you walked in there, but you keep ringing the bell and just letting them know, hey, I'm here, I'm willing to work. Hey, I'm here, I'm willing to work. And, just that type of consistency tells them who you are, And then you got to do the service, the no excuses mentality that I learned when I was at Coyote. That absolutely has carried over into my trucking company, and I'm going to bend over backwards, and especially if there's something that I can fix with running a driver to go fix a problem, we're going to do it no matter what. And if I can't, then I'm going to broker that load. I'll find somebody else to do it. So it's service. Obviously we're a service industry. So, and then with the systems, if you want to be able to play with the big boys, there's going to be accounts that the big boys don't want. Maybe it's 300 loads a year. And for me and you, that sounds great. A ton of freight. That's a load and a half a day, that's great for us. But for them, they're looking for 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 loads. They're looking for a high level of consistency that they can put some of their dedicated fleet on. They want to do dedicated work. Where for us, hey, if you don't have a load for 3 days, it's not the end of the world. We can supplement and get something else in. And like I said, find somebody that you can talk to about it at that company and ask them, what is your problem load? Give me that thing. Let me figure it out. I love logistics. I love trying to straighten stuff out. And there's no end to the phone calls I will make to make sure that everything's going to work smoothly, and usually you can figure it out.
Awesome. Well, as we're wrapping up here, we're going to be over here for the next 15, 20 minutes. If folks have questions for Tom, he'll be around here for a bit. And then tonight we do have that pizza, beer, networking. It's Falls City's beer and parlor combo. Here's the information. We got some cards over here we can hand out as well. Tom will be there. We have a couple other partners of ours and a bunch of folks from our team. So
yeah,
love to see you there. And thank you, Tom, for speaking with me today.
Yeah, love to talk to other trucking companies. Anybody has any questions, definitely feel free to come tonight. And would love to talk to you guys, meet you. And if there's anything I can help with, I certainly will. And I don't have any problem we only run Wisconsin, Illinois, and I've got a lot of customers. So if there's something you guys are doing in Wisconsin or getting up here looking for freight, I can help you get some leads too, maybe. So
sounds good. Thank you, Tom.
yeah, thanks.